I am Dr. Rebecca Clothy. I'm the department head for Global Studies and Modern Languages at Drexel University, and I'm very pleased to be moderating this panel today. We have three very interesting presentations that we are going to hear today, and what I'm going to do first is introduce the panelists. They will present in the order that they appear on the program. And each of them will give their presentations in that order, and then we'll hold off all questions until the end. So take your notes, write your questions down so you don't forget them, and we should have plenty of time at the very end for you to ask our three esteemed panelists your questions. So today we have Thayjas Patil. He is a third-year medical student at Drexel University College of Medicine. He completed his undergraduate degree in neuroscience and economics at the University of Pittsburgh. And he has pursued research in healthcare systems and has worked with many nonprofit and refugee organizations. He's currently a board member and the chair of health and wellness at the Rukmini Foundation. And he is the founder of Oculus Vision. In an effort to combine his interests in healthcare, socioeconomics, and refugees, Thayjas spent a summer working at a refugee center in Berlin, Germany, conducting the research that he's going to present about today. Our next presenter will be Davin Evanson. He's a third-year medical school, also at Drexel University College of Medicine at the West Reading campus, class of 2025. He's originally from Alberta, Canada, and he went to Brigham Young University, completing a Bachelor of Science also in neuroscience. He's a medical intern for Ghana Make a Change, and he has plans to travel to Ghana with the organization during his fourth year of medical school. And our last presenter today will be Christina M. Coleman. She is a senior manager of business process innovation at the Harry Walker Agency. Prior to her current role, Ms. Coleman held positions at Netflix, the NFL, and MTV. She is a member of the Hollywood Professionals Association, a Television Academy Foundation Program alumni, and an inaugural mentee of Netflix Studio Product Innovation's Product Mentorship Program. Her next presentation on tech solutions for creative enterprises will be on June 1st at 12:30 p.m. for her thesis completion symposium for her master's in television and media management here at Drexel. And I know you're looking forward to that, Christina. All right, so now we're going to turn it over to Thayjas for his presentation called The Socioeconomic Pressures Faced by Refugees in East Berlin's Marzahn District, a study on mental health and integration.
Thanks. Yeah, here's my presentation, Socioeconomic Pressures Faced by Refugees in East Berlin's Marzahn District, study on mental health and integration. So a little bit of background to start. So the influx was heaviest in 2015 and 2016 into Europe in general, but Germany having one of the most lax laws in terms of refugees, had suffered one of the more overburdened systems. So both the healthcare system was heavily burdened and also the economic market. Without sufficient access to jobs or healthcare, the mental health of refugees often suffered. There's approximately 970,400 refugees in Germany, 51% being Syrian, 13% Iraqi, 11% Afghani, and 4% Iranian. And Berlin, out of all the states in Germany, is one of the most heavily populated with refugees. So during my time there, I worked at a refugee shelter. I went around 3 different shelters in East Berlin. The sets of housings were run by Volkssolidarität, Hero Accommodations, and the German Red Cross. And I interviewed a total of 9 refugees. They were from Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Morocco. During this time, I also interviewed a bunch of site directors and social workers, that were working in those different institutions. So in general, most of these refugees came around the major influx in 2015. They came in their early 20s. And they came for different reasons. Pakistani refugees usually escaping political persecution, Syrians and Afghanis left because of war and terrorism, Moroccans left mainly for economic reasons. So when they first come, they're usually sent to an emergency shelter for like processing. And the stage happens like earlier on where they enter Europe, say if they, come by boat in like the Balkans or in Italy or Greece. And then often they get, distributed across Europe. Some of them come to Germany. And then they come to these centers, and when they initially get intaken, and I was asking the director of the shelter, Tempelhof, which is one of the largest emergency shelters in Berlin. It actually used to be an airport hangar that they converted, as you can see here in the bottom right. They enter the hangar, and they need a medical checkup, but a mental health screening is often not standard procedure. They often have the mental health services available, but it's kind of a self-service approach, and that's often not enough, being that it's very stigmatized in many cultures. And also, they might not know that it's there. They might not know to ask, so it's often inadequate. So on top of this, depending on, what their reason is for coming and also what country they come from, they can have different levels of economic access. But in the first 3 months, they have, everyone can't work. So they're reliant on welfare as their only income source. And that can have different effects depending on where they came from. If they had a higher, socioeconomic status before, like many Syrians did, they often were earning 4 times more than whatever the welfare rate is in Germany. Then they felt like it was a big burden on them, versus Pakistani refugees who are often earning much less than in Berlin. They felt much better about it. They felt like now they're in middle class. So there's a couple of different types of statuses you can get based off of, like I said, your reason for coming and the country you come from. Refugee status and subsidiary protection are the 2 highest levels of economic freedom. Syrians were the only group that I was able to interview that had this status, and they receive usually 408 euros per month from the state. Duldong is the lowest level, and these are refugees where they're often in processing for a long time, or the countries that they come from, they're not really accepted, so they're kind of have this status until like deportation services come, or for some reason they get able to obtain more information from their home country about why they can live here. And then these refugees only receive about 122 to 133 euros per month. There's usually a set number of countries that are set to get refugee status, and it's often very hard to go from Duldong to refugee status or subsidiary protection. Nevertheless, both of these incomes are below the poverty rate. And even though some refugees do get the refugee status and subsidiary protection, they can still have a lot of difficulties getting the paperwork to get work. So I was interviewing a social worker, and they were saying that even if they have, the proper paperwork and everything's in order, a lot of employers still don't employ them. It's maybe, they said it's maybe because of racism, maybe they're afraid of refugees. And sometimes they just see the name and they just ignore it. Talking to one of the interviewees, they're saying how, it's very difficult without papers. It makes you feel bad because when you're working, you can forget about these problems, but I can't. I need something to keep moving. I want a job. I don't want money. I just want to do something for the community. It's not a good system. They're often stuck in this, wherever they're staying, not able to, do anything, not able to integrate into society, and kind of perpetuates the problems. But those who are able to get proper education and language skills, like a Syrian student teacher that was able to interview, he integrated very well into the society, and, wasn't really experiencing many of the depressive symptoms that he came in with from Syria. And I know this isn't the most detailed interview. I didn't have a translator for this one, but with his limited English, he was just saying that it's been very well, his transition to Berlin's life. So yeah, and some refugees do try to get illegal jobs because paperwork is so hard to do, but they often quit because they're really afraid of being deported, especially because they're on the verge of being deported as it is anyway. If they find this, it's pretty much automatic. Yeah, and yeah, like I said, they're often forced to stay, inside, not able to do anything, stay on welfare, not really able to integrate into society. And of the participants I interviewed, while all of them faced some sort of mental health issue, less than half were assessed by some sort of healthcare professional, and none were receiving treatment. And they were, they do agree that the healthcare system is better in Germany, though, but they feel like this is very language dependent, which most were not proficient in. They did try to find doctors of similar ethnicity to eliminate the language barrier, but this is often not possible because, if we're looking at the biggest group being Syrians, there's still only 1,500 Syrians doctors in Germany compared to the 378,600 total active doctors, and then triple amount of refugees there. And even if there were translation services available, a lot of them are like the basic language, and many of the refugees come from, poor areas in their country, and they often speak pretty different dialects, and the translations don't always work out. And often takes around, if they're looking strictly at how long it takes for refugees to look for and get access to these services, it takes about 3 months, which is, a limitation in itself. So in conclusion, the disadvantages created by the economic restraints definitely perpetuate the mental health burdens that the refugees come in with, and kind of don't really give them a pathway to get rid of them or integrate into society to start working on them. So to improve, the collective mental health, it's necessary to not only improve access to mental health and healthcare services, but really look at how these economic restraints affect these refugees. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that interesting presentation. And we will hold the questions till the end. I know I also have some questions, but we will have 2 more presenters before we open up the floor for questions for everyone. So our next presentation is Empowering Ghana Communities, a case study of Ghana Make a Change organization by Davin Evanson. Davin?
Just share my screen here. Hi all, my name is Davin Evanson. I am a 3rd-year medical student with the College of Medicine here at Drexel, and I'm presenting on Empowering Ghana Communities, a case study of Ghana Make a Change organization. I'd like to acknowledge Kean Bird and Mel Bingham for the information they provided in helping put this together. Ghana, a country with significant poverty and health disparities, faces numerous challenges improving the quality of life for its population. On the right, you can see that the poverty rate in Ghana from 2017 to 2022, they've been above 11% every year in their poverty rates. The organization Ghana Make a Change is a nonprofit and has been working towards addressing these challenges through community-led interventions. The following presentation will discuss the efforts of Ghana Make a Change to empower communities and improve global health outcomes in Ghana. Their methods have been to implement various projects aimed at addressing critical health issues in Ghana by utilizing both local citizens and volunteers to install wells in villages with no access to water. And on the right, you can see one of those wells that was built in Ghana by this organization, providing medical care through temporary and permanent licenses for foreign medical providers, building a school through local workers that will serve primarily in education and secondarily in medical supply storage, a hostel for volunteers, and supplying clinics with equipment and medications. And they've donated clothing, shoes, dental hygiene kits, and conducted dental hygiene education programs. Since its inception in 2016, Ghana Make a Change has made significant contributions to the community it serves. Economic growth is also being seen from hiring locals to build this school, which I'll discuss a little bit later. 13 wells have been installed, benefiting up to 5,000 people per well. Medical care provided to over 500 patients, with 65% of them being diagnosed with and receiving treatment for malaria. Over 5,000 pounds of clothing and shoes have been donated, along with 2,000 dental hygiene kits. The organization has also engaged 65 volunteers during its trips to Ghana who have provided humanitarian services and support. And above, you can see some of the medical care that was provided and also kids receiving those dental hygiene kits. Ghana Make a Change recently partnered with Operation Kids, which provided a nonprofit distinction and allowed incentivized donations. In the 6 months following the partnership, donations increased by 127%. The goal for donations economically is about $50,000 per trip. The school that is being built is on track to be completed in the summer of 2023, this summer, with a primary purpose to teach 8-week business courses. Classes include basic accounting, agricultural skills, and small business production. Training of former students will provide them the necessary skills to teach the courses while sharing their real-world experiences with their new business, therefore allowing for self-sufficiency. So teaching these courses and then bringing the students who benefited from them to then teach those courses to the new students. My video here. For sustainability purposes, the students will be taught to raise chickens, and the produce, which are eggs, will go to generate a revenue that will sustain the school and employees. This will ensure sustainability of the organization's work and maintain funding. It is the first step in a long-term goal of making the local community sustainable in other aspects, including healthcare. At the bottom here, there's a per school 5-year forecast that in about 5 years, the net income from simply teaching students to raise chickens and sell the eggs will be about $24,000. And this is about half of that goal for donations every year. And the very business-minded thing with this is the purpose is if there are tough years where there's not very many donations or difficult to get over to Ghana for humanitarian trips, that this will be able to sustain both the organization and the community without donations each year. Obviously, every year they'd want donations. That would be the best case scenario, but this is to make the local community self-sustaining and empowered. Some of the strategies that have been implemented by Ghana Make a Change to increase donations is through gratitude. Individuals are given bracelets with their names sewn into them when they make donations to the business. These bracelets are made by the Ghanaian people and help the local community. Through social media, Ghana Make a Change currently has 2 operating pages, and every Christmas these platforms promote an initiative that sponsors many Ghana families, which I've personally been able to take part in and seen a lot of donations during that time and a lot of impact on the people. And through sales, purchases of trinkets made in Africa are sold at fundraising auctions to gain funds for the school and humanitarian trips. Sales will also occur in Ghana, creating a majority of profit made, which will be used for school employees, which will also help increase the economy in the local area. On the left is a picture of the school that is very close to being built and will obviously house the education talked about. Their 5-year goal is to provide business education to at least 3 different areas of southern Ghana, reach sufficient revenue levels that the business school in Ghana Make a Change can be self-sustaining, grow the company to support local Ghanans, as well as hire a full-time employee to manage company affairs, and provide additional classes, training, and other fields with an emphasis on healthcare. So Ghana Make a Change's community-led interventions have made a positive impact on global health outcomes in Ghana by addressing critical health issues, providing access to basic necessities like water, and delivering medical care. The organization has contributed to improving the quality of life for vulnerable communities. The success of Ghana Make a Change's efforts underscores the importance of empowering communities in global health interventions and serves as a valuable case study for global health initiatives around the world. And that is my presentation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Davin. And again, we will be holding questions until the very end. We have one more presentation. And after Christina's presentation, we will be taking questions. So Christina will be presenting on creative enterprises investments in tech solutions. Please take it away.
Great. Just really quickly, can I get a thumbs up if everyone can see my actual presentation? Fantastic. And fair warning, it will be a juxtaposition compared to the 2 topics that were just discussed. There are going to be some data points, and it's putting things in perspective for me. But that's also why we're all gathered here today. So let's see here. For the purposes of this particular presentation, I'm going to use the term entertainment technology, so EnTech, if you will. And this is my abstract, but instead of reading it off, the gist is Netflix came along and the rest of Hollywood has always been playing catch up. And this is important in a lot of different ways that I'll elaborate on throughout the presentation. But something to note is that the entertainment industry alone is a $2.5 billion industry. Why is this important? Christina, you're making movies, you're working with people who make movies, you're not saving lives. What could this possibly mean in the larger implications of things? Well, for starters, in perspective, when you look at entertainment technology itself, the sector alone is not defined. However, because the industry is worth $2.5 trillion, it is a front runner compared to the other cross-functional tech industries that are out there. So a reminder that billions is less than trillions, meaning that biotech is a second compared to entertainment technology, followed by then, what do we have here? FinTech, EdTech, and then agriculture tech. There's lots of other sectors as well. Healthcare tech isn't listed on there, for example, but just for perspective, that's a cluster of looking at how it fits within the industry with other cross-functional tech entities. So the next number I wanted to share with you is that $26.5 billion is being spent across the media industry and streaming entities just on content alone. Now that's including but not limited to actually licensing the content, but even if it is licensed, someone still has to pay a studio or a production company to actually make the content to be licensed to begin with. So in 2021, 26.5 billion being spent on content. In the year 2026, we're looking at 93.4 billion. So again, billions with a B. This is a very lucrative industry. Now, what does this have to do with investing in creative tech solutions, and how does this impact the bigger category of what we're getting at today? The first thing is, in order to make that content, you have to think about 2 things. The first is the hardware and technical equipment. So the actual fancy cameras and lighting equipment, et cetera, used on set when actually making a television show or a film. And then thinking about the consumer experience. So when you go to press play on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Prime, etc., everything goes off without a hitch. So those two things are the main things, because at the end of the day, if those aren't lockstep, that impacts the overall experience for the consumer, therefore impacts revenues, etc. The third thing, though, which is what we'll spend more time focusing on today, is the internal business solutions for everything to keep up with the demand of this content being produced and at the volume that it's being produced. So what I'm getting at is, if the studios are spending $26.5 billion in creating content, and it's being allocated towards producing the actual content and then any sort of tech enhancements for the actual consumer to consume that content that's being produced, what does that mean for the folks who are already working at the studios to keep up with those demands? What do those workflows look like? How is that being improved off of what already exists to help streamline their productivity? So something that traditional studios, compared to a Netflix or a YouTube, et cetera, or a Facebook, some of the common pitfalls, they have inadequate staffing or mistitled roles. They'll conflate responsibilities. They won't break it apart. They kind of do it to save cost and bundle a lot of things together, and they'll overextend bandwidth and headcount based on what's truly needed. The salary to attract and retain talent. There's a reason why a lot of Hollywood professionals fled to Netflix, because of the salaries that were being offered compared to the industry standard. And one time in a job interview, I was once told, oh, you're working at this place, that makes up for the salary that you will be getting compensated for this. So with old Hollywood, their thinking is kind of, you work at this big name sort of title, you might get to go to a fancy wrap party, run into some celebrities, and that makes up for you not being able to afford, you know, going out and getting drinks with friends on a regular basis, et cetera. Layoffs. So layoffs fluctuates with the economy, et cetera. So that's still something to observe, but a standalone issue in itself. But I bring that up because it's also a matter of who gets laid off. And then internal resistance to change. So Hollywood is slow to adopt to many things. It's a very lucrative business model. And because it's been working, why change it? Why be too disruptive? Why break or try to reinvent the wheel in any sort of way? So something else with these different types of mentalities, it also backfires on top of them relying on external consultant agencies. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. The thing is that the agencies, if you think about it, the pipeline, it relies on MBA students, whether executive or traditional 2-year, et cetera, and they have very traditional sector knowledge, as opposed to with the media and entertainment industry, it's very niche. So it's kind of like a roadblock, if you will, or a knowledge gap when you go to actually use these consulting agencies. And then the entertainment industry also finds itself in a reactive state. So as an example right now, if we're thinking about AI, they're rushing to replace screenwriters who are on strike right now with AI solutions. So with all of these pitfalls in mind, you'd have to ask, what are the traditional studios doing with remaining resources to continue to perform at the current productivity levels? So if you lay off all of these people and you want to get AI to replace screenwriters, what are you doing to invest those remaining employees? What are you doing to invest their learning and development to poise yourself to be able to know how to leverage AI in order to fully replace screenwriters, if that is the goal? And that is where the gap is that the studios seem not to understand. It's like they're very quick to replace something in hopes that it will save money, but in retrospect, it will probably backfire. And the people that they have laid off will only be either rehired, or if they are replaced and their positions are backfilled, it's because they need people to understand this new technology that's impacting the industry. So AI enters the chat, right? My sources quite literally say not so good things about how prepared Hollywood is to handle AI in general. With a financial income statement that Netflix has on its investor relations website, they have already spent nearly $700 million in tech development for Q1 of 2023 already. The rest of the studios, the traditional studios like Warner Brother Disney and Warner Brother Discovery, Disney, Fox, etc. So those numbers are a little bit harder to come by, but also they're bundled within the overall operations budget, as opposed to with Netflix, again, a tech-first company, they explicitly say, hey, this is how much we are spending in technology. So that's something else to look at. And so when putting this research together and with these actual findings, et cetera, it's also something else I'd like to point out. When I say my sources literally, it's because there is a gap with academic research being available to students like myself and the industry as a whole to say, hey, this is what's happening. This is the formal dedicated research and time being spent in this, as opposed to these current events and what we find in the trade. So that's another thing that's important to recognize with this. And so when factoring all of this together and with the industry rushing to use technology that they're not fully invested in, or they're not fully equipped to handle, or they don't have a full understanding of, they're risking a lot of local economic impact. So going back to the point that I had mentioned earlier, a strong national economy depends on a strong creative economy. These are just some high-level data points to show how impactful a movie or television production is when it is filmed in specific locations across the country. Just my favorite number, 2.4 million jobs created. So if any of those jobs are put at risk because they're saying, not only are we going to lay off our studio headcount, we're not going to film on location, we're not going to use editors, et cetera. We're just going to rely strictly on AI to create these movies and we'll figure it out on the back end. Think about how many people and how many different economies across not only the US, but the globe as well, that will be impacted from that decision because they're not prepared and fully educated with the resources that they really need to be researching. So in conclusion, to remain competitive, I believe that studios must repurpose, not replace, jobs with AI and tech. They have to create internal efficient pipelines to meet the demand of scaled content, basically set up your internal employees for success, and then outsource to partner entities when appropriate and maintain positive cash flows. That basically meaning it's okay, because there's a ton of money in this industry to be made, to partner with a competitor if they are more poised to be able to take on certain parts of a production workflow that you do not have the adequate resources for.
Thank you very much, Christina. It really puts some perspective on things when you're talking about billions of dollars going into entertainment and billions of dollars that refugees and impoverished people in Ghana don't have, but could if funds were directed in a different way. So that was an interesting contrast. We have just about half an hour left of our time. And I would love to open the floor up to questions. I have a few myself, but I would like to open it up to the audience first. And if anyone out there has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and share them. Or type them in the chat if you're shy. Loretta.
Hi, so this is a question for all of the presenters. What motivated you to do this research or to create this presentation in the first place? Why did you sign up to present at this conference?
Why don't we answer that in the order of the presenters? So I think each of them may have a different answer. So Thayjas, do you want to answer first? And then Davin, and then Christina.
Yeah, so I I pursued the research initially because I did a lot of work with refugees when I was in college. And I did want to learn more about, how these things, because I did my, undergrad in neuroscience and economics, so mental health and socioeconomics was like pretty up my alley. But I went to Berlin specifically just because, there's such a great diversity of refugees that are coming there compared to like in Pittsburgh. So it was like good to get like a lot of different impressions on the topic. And I wanted to present it here just because I hadn't presented it before. So I thought it was important to get some of these stories out that everyone was telling me, and this is a good place to do that.
Davin?
Yeah, the reason I wanted to do this was I had planned on going with this organization to Ghana, but then COVID happened, and then I got to med school. So I haven't been able to quite get over there yet, but I reached out to them and said, hey, I've been kind of working with you guys a little bit as on the title of a medical intern and trying to help plan things out. I've helped out with some of the Christmas initiatives. And I was like, I saw this panel presentation that I could join just to get the word out there and to show them what people are doing and what's the opportunity. This was actually created by a buddy of mine that I met a couple of years ago. And he went on a trip over there, saw the need, and just said, you know what, let's do this. Let's just start with wells. That blew up, and he was like, let's build a school. Let's start a business thing over here. And so then I saw that Drexel was holding this global health thing, and I've wanted to incorporate global health into my future as a physician as well. So that was kind of my reasoning for this.
Thank you. And Christina?
Sure. So for me, I touched on it a little bit during the presentation, but there's no concrete, I shouldn't say no, from my efforts in looking for what I am looking for and what I need with my research, it's really hard to come by reliable academic resources, scholarly papers, etc., that hone in specifically on the entertainment and technology sector and the intersection of both of those industries. There's a lot of publications on like the craft of directing and screenwriting and how to run a show, things like that. And then when it comes to tech, it's very much like AI, machine learning, being an engineer, software development. It's very fragmented experiences. So with me, I often feel like the odd man out in these sort of conferences, but to basically show that, again, from the graphic that I shared, entertainment is very much up there when it comes to the need and the usage of technology. And so in general, I'm very much the person that's like, whatever conference will take me, and then I'll just, hopefully over time, begin to build a little bit more traction around this. And so things can start to shift.
Thank you. And the joining thread between all three of your presentations was business and economic trends. And I think even though you all three looked at extremely different contexts, that thread does come out, even though, Christina, you were just saying that your focus is tech. The business side is certainly very relevant there. So we have a couple comments in the chat box here. Alexa's speaker doesn't work, and she has a question for Christina, which is, have you seen any current trends with social responsibility and tech, entertainment tech?
At this particular time, I have not. I would not be surprised, though, once the writer's strike ends, that there will be a huge wave of that conversation. And I say that because the AI conversation and how it's influencing the writer's strike, that's a huge thing within itself. It's also coming off the curtail of DEI and inclusion and the high need for more diversity across the different award foundations, representation on set, etc. So those things coupled together, it will obviously find a way to make itself known. I think the other thing is something dramatic will probably have to happen, unfortunately, for it to be given the immediate urgency of attention that it will need.
It's just so shocking to me to hear the numbers that you posted in the very beginning. In contrast to the two other presentations, I just can't get that contrast out of my mind. And to think that there's no social justice aspect to the entertainment industry is a little bit sad, from my view. So there is another comment by Alexa. I'm just going to read it in case you didn't see it in the chat. Alexa said, I thought Thayjas, I'm sorry. I thought your presentation was great. I just did a semester abroad in Berlin and definitely saw the diversity in terms of refugees and different cultures living there. I think this definitely put pressure on housing in the city, which is a big problem today, and healthcare as well. It could take weeks just to get a simple doctor's checkup, which I think is something that you really highlighted. I'm going to ask a couple of questions as well. I have one for Thayjas and one for Davin. Thayjas, I'm wondering in Germany how they define refugees, because you mentioned, Syrians have access to a certain type of benefits that other people who migrate there do not. And I was wondering, since you mentioned Pakistanis, I believe, how do they end up as refugees and not, let's say, immigrants in Germany?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't remember the exact details, but they have, like, specifically for like the refugee status, they have like kind of predetermined countries that they have, like they set in parliament, where they're like, from these countries we will receive them as refugees because of these conflicts. And like Pakistanis and like some other countries like Morocco, in also, like they don't accept them as refugees because they don't deem whatever conflict is going on in that country as like a major humanitarian issue or something like that. So they don't designate all of the countries as strictly refugees, and it's more so like refugee versus immigrant. It's just like the way it's processed. Like I'm pretty sure if it's an actual immigration debate, it's usually done in their home country. They don't, because a lot of these refugees, they just show up and then then they have to process them. But immigration takes a lot much longer, and it's often done in the home country. But yeah, that's pretty much how it's done. It's very hard for some of these other refugees from not pre-designated countries to obtain refugee status. That's why they often have a lot of trouble, because they often end up being sent back to their home country, and they are constantly running from the immigration police and things like that.
Thank you very much. And Davin, I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of background on the NGO, Make a Change. How long has it existed? Who's the brains behind it? And how much do they involve the local community and their decision-making on projects?
Yeah, for sure. The organization has been around since September of 2017. And my friend, Kean Bird, who gave me a decent amount of information, he and his father, I don't remember his name, we'll call him Mr. Bird. They went over to Ghana because Kean had another buddy, of kind of a mutual friend of ours as well, who lives in Ghana. And they went and visited him and just in September and saw that need and discussed with him. His name is Paul Igpali, and just discussed and sat down and said, hey, how can we help the people here? How can we help the local community? And so they came up with a plan. So they're the Bird family. They're kind of the ones who, kind of the brains behind the organization. But an individual, Paul, he lives in Ghana, and I believe the plan is to have him as the first employee of the school, kind of to manage the local affairs. So having somebody who is local, who knows the people there, as kind of almost the manager, while the organization exists more in America for those people. So that's kind of the plan there. And the plan is for that school to run year round. And obviously, humanitarian trips will only go a few times a year. And eventually they'll build other schools in more locations and then hire local community there to run those organizations. And the other thing with that is that the first people who teach those classes, the business classes I talked about, will probably be the volunteers coming over. But the plan is for those students who are the local community, they will then become the teachers once they've gone out and been successful with their businesses.
Makes sense. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions for our panelists today? The speakers are also allowed to ask questions. All right, if there are no more questions, I think we can thank you all for coming, and thank you for your great presentations. They were very interesting, and hope you have another opportunity to participate in the future.
Thank you.